Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Do you ever get to the end of a movie where the hero had to make a difficult choice, and all you want to do is talk to people about whether they made the right one?
Watch an episode of Star Trek and spend the next few days thinking about the rights of synthetic beings like Data and the Doctor. I became a co-host of the Superhero Ethics podcast because I love those questions, and the people at Wendy's are tired of hearing me talk about them.
We're not a review podcast. We're more interested in questions the characters face and how different works approach similar questions. Sometimes we'll even go behind the camera, talking about how on-screen media gets made and how that affects what questions get asked, which ones don't, and who gets to ask them.
We hit a wide range of media: movies, TV shows, books, and video games.
You can find us under Superhero Ethics wherever you listen to podcasts or go to theethicalpanda.com. But you can also do far more. We love listener feedback and we'll happily talk about your questions or comments on air, and members get special bonus content.
Hashtag not sponsored by Wendy's.
What's up, Supernatural superfans? I'm Chrissy Lenz.
And I'm Nate McWhorter.
And we're the host of
Gang That Drink,
a supernatural drinking game podcast.
It's the podcast where we make up drinking game rules for a favorite episode of our favorite show, Supernatural.
We recap the episode for you and let you know how all the rules played out.
Then we let you know the drinking game rules for the next episode, so you can play along.
Plus, members get every episode early and ad-free,
with some extra bonus content chit-chat at the end of each episode as a member exclusive.
So download Gank That Drink, a supernatural drinking game podcast, wherever the finest podcasts are available.
And or become a member at truestory.fm/gankthatdrink.
And when you're out there in the world saving people and hunting things,
you know, the family business.
Keep the Gank That Drink motto in mind. Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.
All the Feelings presents
Adulting.
This episode:
productivity and time management.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is All the Feelings, and it's season 10, and we're talking about adulting, and I'm Pete Wright, and that's Tommy, the most handsomest man
Peter.
On the show, Tommy Metz the third.
Peter. And you're still basking in your haircut from last week. Oh,
Because I think you called me, if I recall, a snack.
I did. You
Yeah.
were a snack.
Uh-huh.
And you are a snack, and you shall ever be a snack.
No one
Amen.
has ever referred to me as a snack, and I want you to know, in the most honorific terms of plagiarism, I have called other people a snack since then many times because I felt so good being called a snack that now everybody in my life, you are now a snack. You're a snack.
Well, it's one of the first rules. Snack recognizes snack. Everyone knows. Snack sees snack game.
See,
snack recognizes
I had not even heard that rule. I am delighted with where we're going today. So
far, the plan for this episode has been going great. And
it's been going great. We have
that's
ideas.
A good thing, because for season 10, episode 6, which is what we're at, what are we talking about today, Pete? This is a big one.
We're talking about time management and productivity and task management. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Correct.
First, we have some follow-up.
Oh, that's right. From last week, you asked me, it was the conflict episode, and you asked me, how am I passive-aggressive towards others?
And you said, I'm not passive-aggressive because I'm too busy trying to make people like me, I believe were your words.
And I really hem and hawed. And then this week, because if people are on the live stream, they will see that now there is more detritus on my floor, but the suitcase is gone because I did all of my laundry from my trip.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And this is what I remember it is because I live in an apartment building, and so we're all sharing machines, and certain people don't set a timer. I'm always very religious about setting a timer so I don't leave. I'm afraid of leaving my clothes in there for too long because it takes a village and you share.
Oh, I can see where this is going.
So someone, and I realized, I was like, oh, I've done this multiple times. This is completely passive aggressive. There is a sign. So I was in the washer, someone was in the dryer, and they left their dryer stuff in there for a good 20 minutes after it was done.
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Okay.
So they were just like off to their day. And I did this without thinking. And I was like, oh, this is my passive aggressive move. There is a sign on taped to the wall that says, as you know, to be nice to other tenants, make sure that you set a timer or take out your clothes in a expedient fashion, whatever it says. I will take it off the wall and I'll put it on their machine. So when they show up, they're like, hey, okay. And once I almost put it in the machine. So when they opened up to take their clothes, they would also have to wear that side around because you have to wear whatever is in the machine.
That's another rule.
That is like straight up passive aggressive. I don't know who this person is. They don't know who I am. And one day I will go back and all of my clothes will be bleach colored, is my guess.
I thought you were going to say that in the drying cycle, you took like one of those little jars of little containers of food coloring, like blue food coloring, and you take a needle and you poke holes in it, just very fine holes. You throw it in the dryer and put it on high again.
Yep.
And you will get a Dalmatian as a result.
Yeah, that is not passive aggressive. That's
aggressive.
Yeah, I don't know what larceny is, but that might be larceny. I actually literally don't know what larceny is.
That's not larceny, but that's okay.
Oh.
It's a different show. But I will say we once got a letter in our mailbox that was anonymous, and it was apparently sent to everyone in our neighborhood by someone who didn't like how some people were maintaining their lawns. And they said, you are destroying the resale value for the rest of us. Get your lawn in order. And we all stood and looked at our own lawns, and it didn't matter what the state of the lawn was. We rolled it up and threw it away because that was rude.
That is rude. And have you been watching the latest season of Law and Order? Okay. Great, Tom. I have to remember this is being recorded. Okay.
I'm sorry to tell you that may be your best joke of the season so far. So you just set the bar.
Law and Order. Ding, ding. Great.
Okay.
My legacy.
We're talking about productivity and task management, and let's do that right now.
Subset 1.
You are a productivity hero.
This is exciting because this is so up your alley.
That was actually the problem this week. The problem this week, Tom, is I've spent a lot of time in my career, personally, my professional career, thinking about this stuff. And so that makes it really hard to come up with a segment that isn't everything, right? Because you just kind of want to talk about everything.
Okay, you're on the clock.
So I say, I guess we start with the sort of, this person, right? I'm saying that in quotes, that there's this archetype of someone that we know who looks incredibly productive, right? And if you were to look at their digital calendar, it would be all color-coded and perfect and beautifully styled, and they're always busy, and silently they're falling apart.
Yeah.
I think that's the hallmark of adulting. Yeah.
Because you're such a productivity master, and you and your co-writer, Nikki, wrote about productivity and productivity tools so much in your wonderful book, which I read.
Yeah.
Can you see in their eyes, the idea of snack recognizes snack, can you see in their eyes, oh, I can see you falling apart?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course you can, because because someone who's always busy is not productive.
Oh, that's a good point.
Let's all let that sink in because that's really important. Someone who is maladaptively, pathologically busy is not productive. And I say that as someone, again, snack recognizes snack. I can get pathologically busy where I'm working at night, I'm working on weekends, I'm trying to get things done all the time. And it's generally because my productivity game, my productivity train has not just come off the rails. It's like, oh my God, there's a canyon ahead and somebody blew up the bridge.
Got it. So your productivity train is Mission Impossible.
It's Mission Impossible. Yeah. And so I think that's really important to recognize that it happens to all of us, right? It happens to everyone. Productivity is not a constant. There will be days where you will feel completely in charge of your day and your time, and there will be days when you might not brush your teeth. and that will be the hardest thing you do that day, and that's okay. So
Okay.
I'm also one of those people, just in terms of backstory, because I also live with ADHD. And one of the things that I need in my life is new, shiny. And
Right.
I sometimes need to test stuff, right? And when I say I need to test stuff, what I'm saying is I don't need to test anything. I want to use all the things at the same time. And I do that. I will subscribe to and download all the to-do apps or all the notes apps, and I will manually update all of them to see which one I like the best. So I'll have them set up on my screen in columns, and I will add a task in the first one and copy and paste in the second one and set the dates and everything. And then I will check the box and then check the box and then check the box and then check the box and see which one makes the perfect sound that I like so much. It's sonorifically amazing. Yeah. And I will go through an entire month at a time where I'll be quad-wielding to-do apps.
But then you do narrow them. You do cull the herd at some
eventually
point.
I cull the herd. Right. That's gross. I kill every other to-do app.
You bankrupt their companies. Yeah.
I bankrupt their companies
because
yes, and then I sell them off for parts.
Yeah.
What is your relationship with systems like this, like with tools?
I generally am tool scared. I mean, not tool scared, but I am a creature of habit. And so the idea of changing things around can seem very daunting to me. To wit, working with you on this podcast, other podcasts, we have gone through, in my opinion, an enormous amount of different technologies, different plannings, different codas, different Slacks, different Discords, all of these things. And you learned very quickly the idea is, Tom, just share your screen, click this, click this, click this. Okay, you're all set up. You don't have to do anything anymore because I'm not going to learn it. I don't have that type of, I kind of just want it to be like it was.
So I think there's something interesting.
Risk of like not updating enough, about not changing and enjoying the new technologies out there, because I kind of want to know how to do it all immediately, and the learning process can be a little daunting.
Does that hold for the tools that you use in your professional capacity?
What kind of tools? What do you mean?
Do you find that perspective, that sort of positioning about anti-change, anti-technology, holds with tools in your main discipline of filmmaking?
It does, unfortunately, and that is a problem. Meaning that when Premiere Pro, which is what I use, they did a real big switch for a bunch of things, especially titling. Titling completely changed. They had this thing called, I think it was called Legendary something, and that's just what I always used. And it was not great, but I blunted my way through it and knew how to do it. And then they said, okay, now it's all easier and better, but it's going to take you about 45 minutes to learn. And I was like, why? And that sucks. I need to be more adaptive, especially with editing. I need to be able to learn things quicker. And I really have become stagnant with a lot of, like, I have my effects, I have my transitions, I have my stuff. And there is a world of editing transitions and things that I just haven't even dipped my toe into because of whatever that word, I don't know. It feels kind of childlike. It feels like I'm stamping my feet and just saying no. And I hate that.
I'm so glad you said that because
really?
Yeah, I really am, because I think that's one orientation. There's me, right, which is like, you want to teach me something new on the computer? Only 45 minutes? I want the whole training, right? Like, I just will eat it up. And you are like shocked at 45 minutes when the old thing worked fine. And then there's the middle ground. And the middle ground, you're a middle ground person when it feels like all technology change is horrible, and yet Microsoft Excel like the person who wrote it.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So you're in your domain of expertise. Those tools very well, and you are flexible. You're adaptable when it comes, because you can play that tool like jazz. And I think it's interesting because you are an incredibly smart and creative person, and you're curious, and that's all you need to learn new technology, right? Like if somebody wanted to teach you how to use a hammer, you could probably figure it out pretty quickly with less than 45 minutes of training. How is that different than learning a new function on a piece of software that you use every day, right? Just one new thing a day. Yeah. That's the orientation. And so when you look at tasks and tools, like the tools to manage your time, the same thing holds. And I find a lot of people who either like me, who have their entire lives wired, or like you, who I'm gathering don't use much of a digital tool system for managing time and work. And there are people in the middle.
Yes.
Are you in the middle, or are you on the Tom side?
I have to, well, on the Tom side, like my namesake, I have a guess. I mean, my phone is my scheduler. And my calendar app is my entire schedule.
Okay.
And I think I'm using it very weirdly and dumbly in that it is also filled with notes to remind myself. It is also filled with, it's kind of like how my photo roll, I think a good fourth of it is like the number 4, meaning this is the level of the parking garage. And I just like, this is where my car's parked and I never went and erased it. That's kind of what my calendar is. I use that, and I use the notes app for everything. And I bet there's a lot better. At times I have, oh no, wait, I made this last night. I have a reminder in my calendar for today that says, hold on, get some of the stuff off of your phone calendar and write it down in your laptop. Because I have too many reminders. Look, I'm showing Pete.
You are.
I have too many reminders in my calendar, and they're like taking up my entire day. So I have to like put those where they belong. So that's using technology a lot, but in a terrible way, I would think, right?
To the point where, it veers toward maladaptive, right? I think that's the thing.
I'm so in my own way. Yeah, I'm a human.
A little bit you are, but this is why I think it's important to look at the ritual of the system, because what you've created is a ritual around how you use the tools that you use, and ritual is very hard to change.
That's it. Okay, so I'm. For some reason, I'm getting very emotionally caught up and attached to the way that I do this. And it's probably, I'm sure it has a lot to do with anxiety, because that gives me a sense of control. Because I know that I can do it this way, that if you take that away from me, I'm wrongly thinking now I'm just wandering in the woods.
Well, yeah, you're thinking specifically, I'm incapable of doing anything else.
Right. That's
Which is 100%
true.
Wrong thinking.
Got it. Okay, good.
Right?
I'm going to make a note on that.
But make a note in your calendar, Tuesday at 4, use better language about self.
Right.
Because this is the piece of ritual that I think is so important for us to reflect on a bit. And I'll say again, I liked it so much I bought the company kind of an experience. Like the language we use in how we refer to ourselves shapes our orientation in the world. And most of us talk about ourselves in language we would never use to a friend or family member. We speak very ill of ourselves all the time. I'm too stupid to do that. I'm incapable of learning new technology things. I'm afraid of technology. I break things easily. Like that. None of that is true. That's based on a single incident from when you were 6, and now it's become cemented in your psyche that defines how you use everything else. And that, I think, is worthy of change. And I'm not here to this is not an intervention for you. Insofar as I often would like to.
The amount of letters you have written and not sent me. Yeah.
But I do think questioning what you preserve as ritual and what is simply best practice to manage time and work is important. And it starts, honestly, this is where, when we coach people, this is where it starts. And you're kind of a case example.
Okay. We, meaning you and Nikki?
Right. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Me and Nikki Kinzer over at Take Control ADHD.
Yeah. And
your
I don't
time,
have ADHD, at least not diagnosed.
Sure. Your
Did you just spot diagnose me? Oh, man.
I'm just saying we're all a little bit on a spectrum, right? It's okay.
Sure.
It's okay.
Okay.
When you look at a clock, right, what's your favorite kind of clock?
My favorite kind of clock. In what?
Yes. Digital versus analog, but
Analog.
steampunk counts.
Sure. Steampunk,
Okay.
yeah. I like the ease of digital, but if I'm going, I would never hang a digital clock on my wall.
Right.
I would seem like Max Headroom. Yeah.
Okay. Your first answer was analog, and
Correct.
that's supported by what you would hang on the wall. Why do you think that is?
I like things that look a little old. I like retro-y looking things. I don't think that's the answer maybe you're looking for. I also maybe like a little bit of a process.
Okay. Talk to me more about that. How does that work?
When you look at an analog clock, you have to figure it out. It's not a project. It is instantaneous. You can figure it out, but there's options of what you're saying. Are you saying, because analog, sometimes they don't have actual seconds. So are you saying half past, 30 minutes until? You're sort of doing a little deciphering. You're deciphering a pattern on a wall, whereas digital, it just gives you all of the block letters.
All of that screams good for your brain, right? Like it's all good for your brain.
Yes.
There's another piece of it. And I'm going to tell you what that other piece is, and then I want you to see if it resonates with you at all. That piece is that with a digital clock, you see a snapshot of where you are right now in the present moment immediately. This is what time it is. With an analog clock, you get a visualization of the passage of time, what time has passed and what time is yet to come. The arms represent the passage of time. And in terms of that relationship to productivity, an analog clock is a banger because you can see with the arms of the clock the time you have to do things ahead of you.
I love that. That makes a ton of sense. And that really does resonate because digital is just, there is no time but right this now.
Yes. That's
Whereas you can see the future and the past and the future in an analog clock. That's really interesting.
And you get a sense of what 15 minutes is like, what a half hour is like. And you begin to intuit the kinds of rocks that you can fit in a 15-minute jar, right? You can get a sense for what you can accomplish in that amount of time. Now, all of that is making the case, and the research backs that up, right? The social science backs that up, absolutely. When you look at the two kinds of task and work management tools that we have, digital or analog, there is the calendar and there is the to-do list. The calendar is like the clock. It allows you to visualize the passage of time and the stuff you have to do against it. Right? I have a podcast with you from 10:30 to 11:30, and I recognize when I put that on a clock or on the calendar, I actually can see what's left in my day.
Yes.
To fit stuff around, right? I can see how compromised my day is when I look at the individual items against time. That is the value of a calendar. The task manager, the to-do list, right? That has no time against it, right? Some people use it they put times and dates against it by when this thing is due. That's a whole different, methodology. We could talk about that. But generally, if you're just making a list, there's no time against those to-do lists. Like I have to do the laundry. Well, that doesn't tell you when you're going to do it, what time you're going to do it. It doesn't map it against the time you have available. You have to move that to the thing when you're ready to do it. You have to move it to your calendar to see it.
Right.
Putting things that don't have time associated with them on a calendar breaks your brain a little bit. Putting things that are too accustomed to time on a to-do list breaks your brain a little bit. Having a way to manage time and activity between a to-do list and a calendar is really the sweet spot, right? Reminders on a calendar is, I would argue, less effective than reminders in a notes app or in a to-do list.
Right.
No judgment, because ritual.
But I already threw myself under the calendar bus in that I have a reminder to pretty much make a to-do list.
Yes.
Like I can't see what my schedule is today because there's too many to-dos on it. And that's not a good use of a calendar. Yeah.
So you get it, right? And that's where all of the mindset stuff happens, the adulting stuff happens. And I think it's really important because it reveals less about actually doing things, your calendar snapshot of today, than it does about feeling in control. Right. And as adults, that's all we're really looking for.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, that's what is time management, what is task management, other than wrangling the world.
Yes. Yeah,
in
it's
whatever
wrangling
way you need.
My responsibilities, some of which are very short that I can do in the scope of a reminder, most of which I put on a reminders list in order to move to my calendar when it's time to do them, to schedule the work to be done. But all of it is saying, here's the world and my relationship with it, and those responsibilities have to be cataloged somewhere. And that requires a new kind of ritual to really nail it. And so I've spent so much time trying to stay ahead of it, because largely because of the ADHD stuff. All of this for me comes because I live with such a huge amount of constant shame and fear that I'm going to let someone else down by not staying on top of my game. So I've spent a lot of time just like learning and thinking and reading and being a part of this. This is my obsession, is to figure out how to create rituals that make the most sense for my brain, recognizing others' brains are not the same. And yet the consistency is, if you can figure out how to manage responsibilities against time, you will unlock a new level of your life. You will up level if you can put some attention to this. So because then you avoid what we call the collapse. And the collapse is simply the emotional fallout of shame, avoidance, and frantic rescheduling when you're overwhelmed by what you've put on your calendar.
Yep.
Oh, do you know anything about that?
I think I have a couple scheduled.
We call those Wednesday through Friday, because Monday and Tuesday I'm kind of hanging on.
Right. But come Wednesday, it's collapse time.
Yeah. What does the spiral look like for you?
I start bargaining. I think I go through like a dabda.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, I can figure it out. Someone is putting too much stuff on me.
Yeah.
Okay, look, maybe if I cancel on this one person, then I go through the entire denial, anger, bargaining, the whole thing. And then something gives. Usually that's what it is. My sense of control, unfortunately, means I have to cancel something. And I have to decide who will be mad at me the least. And sometimes it's me. Sometimes I have to cancel something. The easiest thing to do is cancel something that I really wanted to do just for myself.
Sure.
Yeah. I cancel the want tos in order to do the have tos.
Yeah. That's not really how we should live, right? As David Mamet said in Spanish Prisoner, through the mouth of the great Steve Martin, I believe, was, when hobbies get in the way of our work, that's one problem. When hobbies start getting in the way of each other, that's entirely different.
Okay.
I think that, what we're looking to do is get out of the realm of performative productivity, where you're just putting things in an app or a device to make yourself feel better, and actually be able to move those responsibilities forward in the world. Because I think your system works very, very well for you right now, but at what level of strain will cause it to break? I'm sure you've been there. And I guess my reflection for you is, and I didn't intend to do this, but you are vastly more capable at this stuff than you think you are. And if there is any way that language could shift and give you a sense of peace in approaching one new thing a day in your system, then I think you might find a way to not pre-schedule the collapse each week.
I'm so used to it.
I don't know. I feel like I could talk about this all day, but I really do think, stop, to the world at large. Stop being productive for performance sake. You're not showing off to anybody. Focus on what is simple, the simplest solution, right? It goes back to not Occam's razor, right? The simplest solution is really the best solution for you.
Right.
It might be a pad of paper, but figuring out your relationship to the work and time is going to help you. You know, it'll help you everywhere. Work, prison, whatever.
Work, prison. Well, I would like to point out that as I mentioned to you before we started recording, to show you how well things are going for me, we're recording an episode about time and task management, and I forgot I was in charge of feeling friends until 10 minutes before we started recording. So no notes for me.
You embody the emotional productivity Ponzi scheme, right? That future you funds the illusion that present you has it totally together.
Yes. Believe While Others by William Arthur Ward.
Believe while others are doubting. Plan while others are playing. Study while others are sleeping. Decide while others are delaying. Prepare while others are daydreaming. Begin while others are procrastinating. Work while others are wishing. Save while others are wasting. Listen while others are talking. Smile while others are frowning. Commend while others are criticizing. Persist while others are quitting.
Benjamin Franklin once wrote, "If you fail to plan, then you plan to fail." Wise words, but even the best laid plans and task management can go awry if certain details are forgotten at the last minute. Such is the case of the wrong turn that caused 17 million deaths. The plan was simple. The politician was to give a speech at the city hall where he would address dignitaries and the mayor. Afterwards, he wanted to visit an injured friend in the hospital and then leave town along a planned route that had been announced ahead of time in the day's newspaper. The politician's driver was named Leopold Lojka, and he had worked for his friend and employer for 4 years. A distinguished veteran, Lojka was known for his courage and quick thinking. Unfortunately, there was one thing that Lojka lacked: how to understand the German language. And this would ultimately become a fairly large problem. For the planners of the event decided to alter the route at the last second after the speech for security reasons, but they discussed these plans solely in German. Lojka, who was Czech, couldn't understand the discussion, and no one bothered to translate it for him. And so after the speech ended, Lojka loaded his charge into his vehicle and set off on the original route. When another rider noticed the mistake, he yelled at the driver to stop, and Lojka did, stopping the car right in front of 19-year-old Bosnian Serb nationalist Gavrilo Princip, who was waiting under the shop awning along the procession's advertised route. Princip stepped forward and shot the politician, fatally wounding him. And as the politician, named Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, died later that day, the path to World War I had firmly begun. And all because a plan was thwarted by one wrong turn. Want to make sure you plan to go in the right direction here in Podcast Town, USA? Then turn on your blinker and Tokyo drift over to allthefeelings.fun and become a feeling friend today. For the low, low price of $25 for an entire season, you'll take an on-ramp into a veritable highway of excitement, including early access to episodes, member-only episodes that are like an HOV lane just for yourself, live stream stickers, and so much more. So vroom, vroom, beep, beep on over to allthefeelings.fun and help Uncle Pete and I keep this podcast on the road. And now, back to the show.
Subset 2.
Procrastination.
Hi, everyone. I just want you to know, it's Pete. Hi. I just want you to know that this segment was supposed to start a long time ago, but Tom can't figure out how to start it because he's procrastinating. Tom? What did you want to talk about today?
So many curtains being thrown back. Oh, so much sausage being made, and they can see all of it. Yes, I wanted to talk about procrastination, and I wanted to see if you suffer from procrastination. But before that, I want to pull back the curtain on myself and tell a deeply embarrassing story involving procrastination.
Oh, please. Excellent.
Okay, so I was in, and I desperately hope, podcast listeners, that I have not told this story before. 10 seasons, yikes. Here we go. I was in college. I was a junior, and I was taking an honors course. And at the end of the semester, we had to write a large paper, and it was for like a third of our grade, and it was supposed to sort of tie everything together. And I wrote the paper and handed it in, and my professor said it wasn't academic enough. I was relating things to films, as was my wont, and instead I wrote too much about film theory and not enough about the course that we were taking, which was sort of a psychology course. And so he said, the paper is good. It's just good for a different class. So I'm going to give you an incomplete. And over the summer, you have to write me a new paper that's more academic. Bring in more stuff from the course instead of just talking about films you like and why.
That is the worst.
Like, got it. And then I didn't. The summer went on. I remember it was the summer I was playing Warcraft in my room.
Oh, dear.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of Warcraft, or maybe it was StarCraft. I had 3 different roommates at the time. We all had an apartment, a 4-bedroom apartment off campus, and we were having a lot of fun. And the summer just sort of kept going, and I kept being like, I need to write this paper, but I didn't know how to, and I just kept putting it off because it kind of made me nervous, and I didn't know how to do it, and there was no class to show up to, so I just didn't. Yeah. Now, I went to school, as avid listeners will know, in CU Boulder, and that's also where I grew up. And so I would see my parents periodically, not all the time because I was in college, but we had season tickets to the DCTC, the Denver Center Theater Company, where like once a month we would go down and see a play together. And on one of these, my dad and my mom, they asked me, how did that paper end up? And I said, great. I haven't heard back from the professor yet. Why did I lie? Because it had already been too long, and I didn't want them to be mad at me. And I forgot I was a legitimate adult, but when I'm sitting in the back seat with my parents talking about school, apparently I revert to being an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
So I went home from the play, and now the nervousness is really kicking in, and it's compounding. Now this paper has to be good and has to be quick, and I just kept pushing it. I kept not writing it because now what was a pretty simple paper had ballooned because now there was a lie attached to it.
Of course.
Next month, Pete, we went to another show and they said,
have you heard from the professor yet?
I said, he still hasn't gotten back to me. I think maybe he's vacationing. Oh my God, Pete, this lie has ballooned. I'm now lying for like a month and a half. Okay, flash forward. I'm still not writing the paper. This also timestamps me. I had a beeper. We all had beepers. Their cell phones
beepers were big on the beeper.
Beepers were big. And I got a beep. I got a beep? No. What did we call messages from beepers? We didn't call them beeps.
I think you just called it a message.
I'm trying to make it into a tweet. So I got a beep. I got a vroom, vroom, beep, beep. And it was a home number. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. My mom doesn't usually, or my dad doesn't usually call. And I called my home. And my mom answered, and she sounded very kind of upset. Oh. Here's what had happened, because I'd never handed in the paper. The professor, not having my off-campus address, wrote the only address that he had, which was home, my parents' home, because that's what I was registered as. And the thing about being the third, Pete, my name is the same as my father's name.
So Tom they opened the mail.
So she opened it thinking it was for my dad, and it was my professor saying, like, what's happening? I gave you a chance. You still have an incomplete. Like, why haven't you written this paper? You have like 2 weeks to do it, or else I'm going to have to give you a non-passing, whatever. And I was just completely caught. And she was like, T, well, my parents call me T. My whole family does. So she was like, T, I have to tell your father. And I was like, absolutely. I don't want you lying for me. And why am I like, I don't want to continue this web of lies.
Right.
It ended up being okay. It was one of those situations. There's been a couple times where I've gotten in so much trouble or broken trust so much, and generally I was a good kid, that it's almost like, we don't know how to deal with this, so we're just going to say, we assume you've learned your lesson and move
Pretty
on.
much. Yep.
Because there's nothing we can do. And they knew I had been torturing myself. It's not like I was like, lying is fun. I had been living in a state of abject anxiety for months. I ended up writing the paper. I ended up getting a B. It all ended up fine. My parents don't bring it up every time we meet. And so
I'll be sure to write.
Story. Yeah, that is my story for procrastination and the disaster that it can lead to.
Oh, okay. But is it time for questions?
Absolutely.
When is it time for questions?
You in the front row, the junior senator from Portland.
You have talked about your anxiety related to the lying about not being productive, but I'd like to know about what happened to you, how you engaged with the content in that last 2 weeks before you turned it in. What was that like? And there's a reason for this line of questioning.
You mean
Counselor.
when I sit down and face the fire?
Yeah. Right.
Yes. That's when I started to learn what I need to do to fight past my procrastination. Because I had built it up so much, this little paper, that just because it had become this big swirling darkness of confusion. And so sitting down at my computer had become a weird, like sitting too close to a campfire. My hands would start shaking. I was having a real visceral physical response to it. And it's just a paper. And I'd already written half of it. I just needed to write the other half. And so what it was a very early lesson on do it for half an hour. Just sit there for half an hour. And then you can take a break and Warcraft it up. And eventually I just wrote the paper. Once I started, it was never anywhere near as hard as I thought it would be. And that continues to this day. That when I am averse to something, when I'm really scared about getting started, I just need to get started. And then usually I lose myself in it.
Right.
There's one other big lesson, but do you want to interject with, because you brought this up, because you said you had something.
I brought it up because it's kind of a corollary to something that's a known issue in procrastination, which is, it's got a bunch of names. The big fancy name comes from a guy named Russell Barkley, who's fantastic. And he calls it interest-based rather than importance-based productivity, right? Where when it comes to motivation, you need emotional intensity, right? Often related to anxiety or novelty in order to act, not just knowing that it's due. You've got to find a way to become interested in it. The other that we use more often is either like deadline-induced dopamine or panic productivity or doom motivation, right? All of those relate to that experience of, oh my God, I've procrastinated so long that now I don't even remember what I'm supposed to do entirely. How am I ever going to get there? But eventually the dopamine kicks in, usually very close to the deadline, and you are able to do it, right?
Yes.
You can habituate that requirement to have dopamine and constantly live in that deadline-induced dopamine place. I wonder how that would have worked out for you in this example had your parents not found out. Because the alternative is you never would have written the paper, you would have failed it. And because fear would have gotten in the way, anxiety, whatever. But your parents found out, which triggered something. And did that lead to this kind of motivation? Or because what you described is a really intelligent approach to managing, hard projects. Break them down, visit them for short periods of time, reward yourself for attacking them, that kind of stuff.
One of the things, because you brought up a dopamine hit, one of the lies that my anxiety tells me about procrastinating, about pushing things, is I accidentally get hooked to the incredibly fleeting but strong moment of relief of saying, not today.
Oh, sure.
I
Agency.
convince myself tomorrow's going to be the day. Tomorrow's going to be the day I attack it. And that goes on for weeks. But why I call it a lie is because I get a flood of relief. And then if I'm not keeping my eye on it, the simmering, we've talked about this before, the simmering starts.
Yes.
I'm just marinating in anxiety because I know I've just made a decision that is going to make tomorrow even just incrementally harder because I'm making this problem bigger than it is.
Right.
I wasn't worried about the paper. I was worried about fear. I mean, I was just fear for fear's sake. I had lost complete control of the topic. And I was just scared about being scared about being scared. And it had nothing to do with productivity. It had nothing to do. And that happened again. I think I did talk about this, and it's an extremely short story. But during the pandemic, I was taking those online courses through UCLA. And I took one called The Sociology of Mass Communication. Desperately loved the class, desperately loved the professor. And then the final paper, which was an enormous part of our grade, came out. And do you remember what the paper prompt is? I don't know why you would remember.
I remember it was season 2 that we talked about it.
It was, what is progress? 3 words. What is progress? And it was so wide, and I wanted to impress her so much, and I loved everything about the class, that I started writing an outline. The outline became 10 pages. The paper was supposed to be 6. And then I just had vapor lock, and I couldn't figure out what to do. So much so, again, the something's got to give, the collapse. I wrote her and said, I can't do it. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough research. I don't know how to do it. She, being extremely nice and realizing I'm 90 years old taking a class for college students, so I'm obviously there for my own betterment. She was like, okay, I'll give you 2 extra days. You have 2 extra days to figure your stuff out. I think it'll be worth it. You're going to want to write this paper. And I ended up writing an A+ paper. I love that paper.
Yeah.
It talked about progress in the through the eyes of Icarus. Like, what is progress at what stake as you fly closer and closer to the sun? So I needed the pressure release. That's what she gave me.
Sure. Yeah.
But then the other thing that I realized, and this also with the 30 minutes on off, I have a tendency to look at big, swirling, scary things as I'm going to have to grit my teeth and do it all in one day. And that day is going to be hellish. And that day is going to be just clawing through it. And then at the end, I will collapse on my keyboard, sweat mopping from my brow. And that's just not how it is. No. You lose yourself halfway through it, and you're just sort of deeply interested in what you're doing because you start making contacts. That's the real dopamine. And then don't save it all for one day. One day, work on researching or reviewing some of the material. Second day, do the outline. Third day, write the paper. Split it up.
Sure.
And that's just what I need to do. That's not going to work for everybody, but that is what I have learned, because procrastination is a serious monkey that is always hanging around somewhere near my back adjacent, and I just need to start the process.
Yeah.
And then it gets better.
I think that's really smart, because the thing that we're scared of, you said it, the thing is not about the thing that we're upset about is not the thing, right? The thing is not the paper. The thing is not the assignment. The thing is not the project at work. The thing we're upset about is something inside of us. You said something earlier as an aside, and I just want to make sure we say it out loud, because I just want to counter the language, because you were talking about how, I was not able to do this because of the fear. It's not about productivity. And I just want to remind everybody, it is about productivity. The whole thing is about being able to create, to produce. The root of productivity is about creation. And when the fear gets in the way, it is absolutely about your ability to have agency so that you can create using the power that you have in your skin, right? To touch things and make something new. And that, in that regard, it really is, it's everything. It's everything. Being able to move past the fear. And so I think that's really important to realize you don't have to be an adrenal ninja just to get something done.
Right.
What you described is the idea of breaking down hard things into their smallest atomic elements, right? Maybe it's write my name on the paper. Check. Right. Sure. You said it. That's the dopamine hit, right? The smallest thing is find one resource today that I'm going to be able to use. Just Kuroshdini, I may have mentioned him. He's one of my favorite thinkers and psychiatrists, and he wrote a book on finding flow in productivity. And he said, one of the things that I recommend more than anything else is just to visit hard tasks. And visit just means not think about it, but get out all the resources that you need. Touch them, like put your hands on the books that you're going to need to do, right? The keyboard to open the document that you're going to need to write, like really visit it. Even if you don't actually do anything with it, you've touched it. And that keeps it in the back of your mind. It keeps it cooking. And if you visit it every day, by the end of the week, you're going to have something to say. You're going to have something to contribute to it. And I love that so much. The visit is an incredibly powerful metaphor for your practice for building toward like mindful productivity. So everything you described, including the run up and the fear, is, God, man, no one has, I've never met anyone, let's say, who has not experienced that. And yet it feels like you're completely alone.
Yeah. Yes.
Just like Tiger King.
Oh, no. Was Tiger King a big procrastinator? That's how we ended up with all those tigers all over the place.
Yeah, I know. They're everywhere. And we still don't know how it ends because we procrastinated too long.
We never started watching the Tiger King.
We never watched Tiger King.
Oh, my God.
A poem about procrastination by Anonymous.
Tomorrow seems a better time, much better than today. I'll do these things tomorrow, then tomorrow's what I say. But when I say tomorrow never seems to be more right, because when every day is today, then never is tomorrow night.
Thank you all so much for joining us for this episode. This week's tune is Are You Ready? By Castle Heist. T, what are we doing next week?
Well, we're not going to procrastinate on next week's episode because we're talking about the little ones in our lives who sometimes grow up to be big ones, kids and dependents. Dependents, not independents. Kids ampersand dependents. Because I don't have kids. You've got too many. And I just have a furry child, which is not a child, it's a dog. And we're going to be talking about what that means as adults and having people rely on us for everything, like food and or sticks. So that'll be a good episode.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess you'll have to tune into the episode to see which one wants food and which one wants sticks. Until then, I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Tommy Mess III. Thank you so much for downloading. We will be back next week with All the Feelings, adulting.
It's only one step till we're finally free.